Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Burniston Auto Wrecking in Burniston, Massachusetts with a little bit of sport compact fun. Now, we all know that in the mid-70s, the Honda Civic and the Volkswagen Rabbit, or Golf internationally, really revolutionized the small car compact segment of the marketplace. Really, fuel economy was far better than Pintos, Vegas, Colts, and they really rewrote how automakers considered ultra small vehicles. Well, by 1983, the Civic grew a smaller, sportier version called the CRX, which stood for Civic Renaissance Experimental, CRX. Now, these were sold in Japan as the Ballad, but here in the United States as the CRX. Now, these are available in three varieties: the HF, high fuel economy, the Sport, and the Sport Injection. Now, this one is a mid-level Sport. The Sport Injection would have a rear wiper for the window, a larger tail spoiler, and of course it would say CRX here at the back of the car. We'll talk about some of the differences on this as we move around. As we come down the side of the car, Shane, maybe we'll split in the middle here. One thing too is the CRX, while it had the standard rear wiper, CRXs also came standard with a sunroof, not here. Now, the beauty of this thing is how short and small it is. This thing rides on an 86.6-inch wheelbase, which is 10 inches shorter than a four-door Civic and 7 inches shorter than a Civic hatchback. So these things are microscopic. Now, check this out. In this country, the United States, these are two-seaters, but in Europe and in Japan, there was actually a 2+2 version of this with minuscule back seats underneath this glass hatch that could be had. But again, here in the States, these are strictly two-seaters. Now, one thing I will mention is that the Junkyard Crawl is seen internationally on YouTube, and the stuff that I describe here, the facts, are pertinent to the United States market. I know full well that in Japan, there were smaller 1.3-liter engines and all kinds of stuff that we just didn't see here in the States, so I don't even know about them. But what I can describe here is what I see, and this is an American spec Civic CRX. Let's look inside. We'll pop the doors open, and one thing you will see on this one, of course, is the automatic transaxle, which of course rules out SI status. The automatic was strictly seen on the more pedestrian cars, but we see a 120-mile-an-hour speedometer, which is maybe 15 miles an hour optimistic. This is probably good for 105 miles an hour. The 6,500 RPM tach, indicative of the overhead cam engine under the hood. We'll get to that in a second. And something unique to the CRX is this little cubby hole right here in the center of the dash. This thing here opens like that for extra storage. And check this out. It's a little bottle of Honda touch-up paint. It actually matches the red of the body. Kind of cool. This one does have the Honda AM/FM radio, a factory AM/FM radio with the Honda logo on it. Here it is here, signal seeking. Doesn't have a cassette, but kind of cool to see the original radio in place. So let's now we'll take a look at the back. We'll pop the seats forward. Do this on both sides. And now here it is right here. Now, again, in Japan, there was a 2+2, two people version. I can only imagine the discomfort of trying to sit in the back of this thing. I'm 6'1", and that wouldn't be much fun. But again, here are the plastic wheel covers. And again, this is before Honda and the rest of the auto industry discovered the beauty of aluminum wheels. They were actually more expensive, but now the production volumes are such that plastic wheel covers are just a thing of the past. Now, these look okay, but again, let's not make the mistake. These cover a basic stamped steel wheel. But a cool thing here is this cubby hole in the back. Yeah, look at that. You can put extra things in here. And here's a spare headlight right here. There's a halogen square light. Some spare brake pads. Of course, these things had disc brakes up front. An ice scraper, which explains some of the rust on this one. This is a Northeast car, and I hate to say it, year-round, this can be driven, but in the wintertime, the salt will definitely kill it. If you look at the rocker panel down there, you'll see some pretty nasty, I will call it car cancer. That is the rust in the rockers. And like any automobile, these are just as prone to rust as any other. But there's something about the CRX, or the Ballad as it was called in Japan, that makes the front fenders resistant to rust, and that is plastic construction. We'll notice right here that the fender is actually not rusted, it's pristine. Now, it's cracked, which is something metal doesn't often do. So these are plastic, but this is Road and Track magazine, October 1983. Now, on the cover, of course, the Mustang SVO, that's all a big deal. But up here, we see here the Honda CRX. Here it is here, letter from Japan. Now this again is a 1983 issue, and they're talking here, they're predicting what the Honda CRX is going to be like. And something kind of cool is the reference here. It says here, the novel and significant part is the lower body's outer panels, including complete front fenders made of Honda's new injection molded plastic called Honda Polymer Alloy, or HP alloy. The free-forming, light and impact absorbing material is a mixture of polycarbonate, ABS, and one more element, a bonding catalyst X, which Honda is not willing to talk about. Interesting. HP alloy's weight-saving virtue is considerable. The 0.12-inch thick panels are some 45% lighter than steel, and they save 6.6 pounds versus the steel fenders seen on Civics. So kind of cool. You know, the CRX kind of spearheaded some exotic materials. Of course, plastic panels now are very common on almost every car. They're lighter, again, they don't rust, and they help the fuel economy and power to weight ratio, so why not? Now speaking of power, we don't look for much in these cars, but again, with a curb weight of 1,819 pounds, these are really light. Now of course, these were built before the times of major pillars and rollover standards and 3,000 pound curb weights, which are normal now for Civics. I mean, they're pretty heavy, but these are quite light, so the little tiny engine wasn't such a big problem. Let's take a look and see what we have. Now these do have the same suspension front and rear as a Civic, which is to say McPherson struts up front, a tube axle with coils at the back, but here we have the mid-level engine. There were three models. Again, the HF, high fuel economy, had a 1.5 with 2 valves, and the Sport has this, the 3-valve 1.5, and of course if this was the SI, it'd be a 1.5, but again with a dual overhead cam, 4-valve version of this basic engine. Power here is 76 horsepower versus 91 out of the SI. And I know that in Europe, the SI had far more than 100 horsepower, like 115, 120, something like that. But here in the States, we had 91 horsepower on the SI. But again, this is the mid-level with 76 horsepower out of that 3-valve. And here's the thing, keep in mind, this is a 4-cylinder engine. There were 2 intake valves and 1 exhaust valve. Kind of weird. But again, the Ford Mustang used this on the 4.6 in its final version before the Coyote came along. So 3 valves, not that exotic, but here it is here in a Honda back in 1985, a good almost 20 years before Ford embraced it with their 4.6. But again, a nice example, really original paint. The paint on the cam cover here is definitely not Honda. They didn't paint stuff red like that. That's definitely some day 2 sport compact kind of stuff right there. But again, otherwise, largely unmolested. Here, of course, is the distributor. It runs off the end of the camshaft, and there's a single cam underneath this cam cover. And it's interesting, too. It's this basic, oops, sorry. There's that wonderful, I guess the X-agent must have gassed out or something. Sorry about that, Honda. But anyway, here's the cam cover. It's not aluminum. It's a stamped steel piece. Kind of weird. So that means underneath this, there must be some pretty heavy bridges and girdles to keep that cam in place. A lot of engines have a cast aluminum cover, which actually forms part of the structure that locates the cam. But here's the belt drive inside of that right there. And yeah, this whole front clip right here, same as a Civic. And that was the beauty of the Honda Civic and the CRX performance variant. They made use of pre-existing components, so they're fairly inexpensive for Honda to create bunches of very different cars off the same basic parts bin stuff. Now this is a first-gen CRX, third year, 83, 84, 85, so the very beginning of the CRX dynasty, which continues to this day. But it's the humble beginnings right here, and these things are starting to heat up value-wise. In fact, the interior parts on this thing here, the door cardboards, as they say, the door boards, the seats, which are high back buckets with lumbar support, they're all in very good condition. And I don't get in the middle of this stuff, but Berniston Auto Wrecking, you can talk to Dale Hastings, the owner, and if you have one of these you're restoring, these parts are always for sale, or just come and get this car and save it. Got to say, this is the year 2022, and this car is now, gosh, like almost 40 years old, you know, so it's a thing where these things are heating up, and these are significant cars, the beginning of the CRX dynasty right here, third model. Kind of cool. And again, the CRX SI wasn't even available in 83 and 84. It came along in 85. So it's all first year stuff in 85. Not that this is an SI, but it's the next best thing. It's an S Sport. So if you want to come and get it, just call Berniston Auto Wrecking. I stay out of the middle of that stuff, but I hate to see these cars go to waste. But if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Mag's YouTube channel and stick around. There's plenty more.